Okay, everyone. In class, we looked at this passage at the beginning of the week. We looked at the prompt that asked, does the writer feel that scientists should keep researching the giant squid? It's a simple question, but every kind of constructed response requires a specific format for answering. If you look over here, I have an organizer. The first thing that I need to do every time I answer a constructed response is to make sure I restate the question in my answer. This helps to clarify the prompt. The writer does think that squid research should continue. While this is a very simple statement, it allows anybody reading my response to know that I understood the original question. The second thing that I need to do is make sure that I have a transition leading into my citation. The citation should never be left as its own sentence. I can do this in many ways, but I chose this transition. This is revealed when the author states. Then my next item is the actual citation. When I looked in this passage, I looked for the most supportive quotation for my response. And what I came up with was this: but the many fascinating mysteries about the creature still need solving. I looked at this, and a lot of word choice is what I'm focusing on to show that the writer does feel that this research should continue. These are the two items, though, that we need to be working on in class: clarifying the quote and explaining the quote. This is that extension piece, that analysis piece that's so important. And a way that you can do this and help you to remember is to use a sentence starter, and I provided this for you. Okay? The first step is to clarify the quote. So when I look down here, I can clarify the quote in many different ways. I can paraphrase it, I can give a word definition, or I can provide context around the quote. What I'm going to do is just put it in my own words. I'm going to paraphrase it. Let the reader of my passage know that I understand that citation. So I'm going to use in other words. Okay, and watch how I do this. Okay, in my clarification, I wrote, in other words, while some questions have been answered, other information is unknown. So I'm just adding a little bit of context and clarifying this quote, paraphrasing it, putting it in my own words. Clarifying means to make more clear. The second step is to explain that quote. So how does that quote support my answer that the writer does think that giant squid research should continue? Again, I'm going to go down here to my explaining it. And like I said, the word choice really stood out to me. So I'm going to talk about that word fascinating as my explanation, as my analysis. I'm going to say the word fascinating demonstrates that, and this is a sentence frame, the writer is interested in the content. Since this word is positive. Okay, so I gave an explanation. I'm looking at that word, I'm analyzing that quote and talking about how that supports that the author does think it should continue. And lastly, I'm going to add a little bit of an extension, because why not? We want to make our response as thorough as possible. So I'm going to just add to that by saying he, she, because we don't know who the author is, also asks if the important research should continue, which adds to the intrigued
Mr. Kinhope, will you meet Ms. Tinsley in the 7th
tone
hall?
of
Kinhope.
the
Ms.
passage.
Tinsley would like to meet you in the 7th
Sorry about
hall.
the interruption.
Thank you.
Okay. So here is my response read all together. The writer does think that giant squid research should continue. This is revealed when the writer states, but many fascinating mysteries about the creature still need solving. In other words, while some questions have been answered, other information is unknown. The word fascinating demonstrates that the writer is interested in the content, since this word is positive. He or she also asks if the important research should continue, which adds to the intrigued tone of the passage. Okay, and intrigued is just another word for interested. Okay, so I use this as my whole format for race response, and if I wrote that as a paragraph, that would definitely get a distinguished ranking for constructed response on the milestones.